If you want to lower your 2008 to 23 rear-wheel drive Challenger and improve its handling without spending a fortune, the StreetPlus Coil-Over Kit here we have is a great option. Designed for a balance of performance and ride comfort, this setup is going to get you the stance and the improved handling you're after for an affordable price. Now, as we all know, lowering your car is a great way to improve the looks and handling. By dropping the car overall, you lower that center of gravity, keeping the weight of the car closer to the ground. And that is going to inherently make it corner a bit better than it would stock, since that weight has less distance to travel, and it's not, up on stilts. However, going with coilovers versus, say, lowering springs also has some distinct advantages, and that's where the StreetPlus coilovers come into play. At their core, this is a set of height-adjustable coilovers consisting of twin-tube shocks, adjustable collars, and some uprated springs. This kit allows you to fine-tune the ride height of your car anywhere from a 1.5 inch up to a 4-inch drop. So if you want this thing as low as possible front and rear, just dial them all the way down. Or if you've got some nasty roads nearby, you can crank them up for a little bit more ride height, and you're still going to end up being a bit lower than stock. Now, these are a street-oriented setup first and foremost, hence the name StreetPlus. So these are not going to be quite as stiff as some of the more performance-oriented options or the track-type options, but these are going to strike a good balance for a car that is going to see mostly street use with the occasional track day or autocross thrown in. Now, they also do have some additional features to keep things controlled and balanced when you're carving up your favorite road. The twin-tube shocks feature nitrogen charging for consistent damping performance. It's going to provide you with improved handling characteristics in addition to high-speed stability and comfort out on the highway. So again, a good balance of ride and handling with these. The spring rates here are also, of course, going to be higher than stock as well. It's going to help keep things planted, and it's also going to account for the shorter travel of the uprated shocks. So this will be a firmer ride overall as compared to your stock setup. It's the nature of the game when it comes to coilovers, but it's not going to go so far as to be punishing or totally ruin the ride quality. It's just going to firm things up a little bit, and that's also going to be a benefit in the corners as well. You won't have as much body roll. Construction here is all heavy-duty zinc-plated aluminum for the shock bodies. You've got anodized collars and mounts up top too, making these reasonably lightweight and also quite durable. The front shocks have 50mm bodies, the rears are 44mm, and everything is either powder-coated or anodized to help ensure that it will be resistant to rust and corrosion. So these should last you a good long while, and they come pretty much complete, ready to go right out of the box. You've just got to swap this stuff in place of your stock setup. Pricing for the whole kit comes in at about $925, and that makes this one of the least expensive coilover kits on the market for these cars. Now, you're not getting all of the fancy stuff here, since these are only adjustable for ride height, not for damping or rebound, but you are getting a really solid setup for your money. So if you're looking for an effective way to lower your Challenger and improve the handling without ruining the ride quality, this is a great setup that won't break the bank. Installation will get a 2 out of 3 on our difficulty meter, and you should plan on it taking you around 4 hours to complete the job. Since the front struts do come pre-assembled, you're only going to need to swap these out. Same is the case for the rear shocks and springs. Now, it's a bit of a time-consuming process. It's going to require some disassembly, but it is a pretty straightforward one, and you don't need a spring compressor for this job. So definitely something you can accomplish at home without any special tools. And we're going to show you what's involved right now, so for that, let's head on over to the install bay.
Tools required for this install include a couple different size impact guns, a hammer, a ratchet, 18 and 21mm wrenches, a clip remover tool, a tape measure, the included spanner wrenches, an extension, 10, 13, 18 and 21mm sockets, 15 and 16mm swivel sockets, a pry bar, and pole jacks or a floor jack. What's up, guys? Today we're installing a coilover kit on our Challenger. First, we're going to watch a quick uninstall video showing you how to remove your factory components, and then we'll meet you right back here for the install.
First step, we're going to get our wheels out of the way. Our factory lug nuts here are 22mm, so I got my impact gun. I'm using air tools for this, but if you don't have air tools, of course, a lug wrench works just as well. This is just going to make life a little easier. All right, next up, we're going to disconnect some of the ABS lines here so we don't put too much stress on them as we remove some suspension components. Now, these are just rubber. I'm just going to pull straight off on that guy. There's 2 more clips on your brake lines as well. I'm just going to disconnect those to give it a little bit more slack. Next up, we're going to disconnect our sway bar end link from the strut body. Now, this is a 21mm nut. Now, using air tools, it can be a little easier, but if you're using an impact gun, it might start spinning the bearing, in which case you want to be able to hold onto the backside with something to keep it from spinning. Got it. All right, so now you can pull the sway bar end link out of the strut body, and I like to just put that nut back on just to keep it safe, you know, so we don't lose it. What I just did was I put a pry bar right on the other side of the spacer to put a little tension on it as I took it off to keep it from spinning. All right, next up, we're gonna tackle the nut holding on our upper control arm to the knuckle itself. Now, this is an 18mm nut, and what we're gonna do is use a swivel socket on my impact gun, or you can use a ratcheting wrench, that'll work as well. We're gonna work this guy off. It might also be a good idea to put a pry bar on the spring and pry down on it so it doesn't shoot off. All right, we're gonna keep this on a couple of threads just to make sure we can disconnect these two without it shooting off. So just put the nut on a couple of threads. All right, so now I'm gonna pry up to disconnect the ball joint here. So now we can pry back down, take that nut off, and work this off easily. All right, just guide the knuckle back down, and I'm just gonna thread the nut back on so we don't lose it. All right, use that same 18mm socket, and we're gonna remove the bolt holding on the factory strut to the bottom control arm here, the lower control arm. Now, the nut is already on the strut body, so we don't need a wrench on the other side, but I am gonna keep my hand here to keep it from popping off too quickly. All right, next up, we're under the hood because we have to remove the 3 nuts holding on the top of the strut tower. Now I'm gonna twist off this cap here, and I'm gonna set that right onto our cowl there. Now that will expose the back 2 there. These are 13mm, so grab your impact gun and your socket and get those 3 off. All right, now as you remove the 3rd one, the strut's gonna fall straight through, so you wanna have a hand on it to get it off. All right, now that you have a hand on it, you can push down on the suspension assembly there to pull the strut away from the lower control arm and then off of the vehicle. It's time to get started on the rear springs. Now, to uninstall our factory ones, it looks a lot more complicated than it actually will be. So you want to grab a 13mm socket and an extension. What we're actually going to do is lower down our 1 exhaust pipe. Now, the reason being is to lower down this rear cradle, what we're going to do is remove this bolt holding it to the back end. But we can't back that bolt out because the tailpipe is in the way. So what we're going to do to make our lives just a little bit easier here is grab this 13, we're going to go up, remove the brackets on our hangers that hold the isolators together to the frame. We're gonna remove that bolt, it's a 13mm bolt holding it to the frame, lower down that hanger, then there's another one right on top of the exhaust tip. With those 2 out of the way, we'll be able to lower down our exhaust tailpipe just enough to clear that bolt, get that backed all the way out. With that in mind, we're also gonna remove the bottom shock bolt. That's holding that to the cradle itself as well. We just need a little bit of clearance to get the factory one out. First step, 13 socket, extension, impact gun. Let's pop off those hanger brackets holding it to the frame. All right, we got that one loose. We got one more under the tailpipe tip. All right, this one's a little bit trickier to get to right above our tip, but we just have enough clearance to get to it without needing a swivel. You can see that cap back coming down. Just let it hang off. We're gonna put our bolts aside. All right, guys, now you can see we have that lowered down. You can see us getting a lot more clearance, and now we have enough room to back that bolt out. And of course, if you needed to, you could pull down just a little bit on that back tailpipe to give yourself more clearance, but I think we're good right there as it is. All right, the next step here, I actually want to get our pole jack out. Now guys, if you remember, we're using a lift here at our shop, but if you're on the ground, hydraulic jack does the trick just as well. You want to have a pole jack here. We're going to jack this all the way up, just to put a slight bit of tension, take a little bit of tension off of that cradle. So we're just barely holding that up. So a little bit of tension. Do the same thing with a hydraulic jack if you're working on the ground. We don't want that cradle to shoot down with all of that tension from that spring, so you want to support that weight. If you're up in the air with a pole jack, that's a good way to go. If you're on the ground, a hydraulic jack will do the trick. Makes it easier to lower it down. All right, guys, with that weight supported, you want to grab an 18mm socket and 15mm wrench and pop off the bottom shock bolt holding it to the cradle. The 18 is going to go on the nut, 15 is going to go on the bolt head side on the opposite end. Now, if you need to, grab a ball peen hammer, just tap that out to get the bolt to come through the other end. Next up is that bolt on the back end of that cradle. Grab an 18mm wrench to hold the nut side and a 15mm socket to get the bolt head. Make sure at this point you have that weight supported. All right guys, once that bolt's out of the way, we can start lowering down our pole jack ever so slowly. Now, like I said, this is under a lot of tension. You don't want to get it down too quickly just to unload all that pressure. Go very slowly with your pole jack, and if you're using hydraulic jack, just slowly rotate that handle to get that to lower down. Once you get that nice and loose, you'll see all that pressure comes off. You get a lot of play in that spring. Get your jack out of the way if need be, or lower it all the way down. Make sure you're pulling that isolator out with it.
So now that we have our rear spring removed, the last thing we need to do is fully remove our shock. So we've just got two 16mm bolts left up top. So I'm taking a 16mm swivel socket to pull these out, and then we can pull our whole shock out of here. Now with those out of the way, just pull down to compress the shock to get it out of the upper mount, and then we can pull this out. Now with all of our factory suspension parts removed, we can line them up to our new parts, take our measurements for how we want to adjust these. Now I'm taking 2 inches off of our front struts and our rear shocks, and about 1.5 inches off of our spring assembly. That's going to get us a round flush tire to fender fitment, and then you can adjust on the car from there, your little adjustments as needed. Right now we just don't want to have this thing be either a monster truck or sitting on the frame when we put it back on the ground. So now we're going to start off by measuring our stock strut. And we've got about 27.5 inches. So on our new one, we're going to look for 25.5. Right now we are a little over 24. So we're going to break this collar free with our spanner wrench. Ours just kind of came undone, but you just take this small one, put it in that slot and twist, and then we'll twist this bottom part to unthread it to add to our length. And then every so often remeasure. Got about 24.5, so we've got another inch to go. And that's our 25.5. So we're going to bring this collar back down. We're going to make sure we have our orientation right. We want the 2 studs that are close on the top hat to line up with this ear for our sway bar. And then grab your spanner wrench, tighten it down. Next up we have our spring here. So our measurement on the factory is about 12.5 inches. So we're gonna want around 11 with our adjustment and our spring. Same thing here, break this collar loose, and then this collar is gonna be your adjustment. We're a little short of 11, so we need to turn this one down. This one's gonna lock up against it. And that's got us right at 11. So get that collar up against the first one. Take your spanner wrench and tighten that down. Now lastly, we'll get our shock. So our stock measurement's about 25.25. So we're gonna be looking for 23.25 on this one. We've got about 22.25 right now. So we're gonna have to break that collar free. Turn this to expose some more threads. And we'll remeasure. And that's our 23.25 right there. So we can spin that lock collar down and then snug it up with your smaller spanner wrench. And now at this point, you can repeat the same process for the parts going on the other side, and we'll get these onto the Challenger. So now we can start working on getting the rear installed. I'm gonna pop out our 2 spring isolators first. We're gonna be reusing the bottom, but we're not gonna be reusing the top. So these are pretty stuck in there, so I'm just getting a clip remover tool to get up behind it and just break it free a little bit. And then we can pop that out. Now our bottom's pretty loose, so we can just pull that straight out. So now you can grab your spring and your bottom isolator. We've got this little lip that the edge of the spring sits against. So get that lined up, press this onto your spring, and then we can slide this back and into place. And then I'm gonna get this top piece in place and then get my pole jack underneath. And now we can get our shock in there. So I'm just gonna kind of angle it in and then push down on the top of the shock. Get it into our lower cradle, line it up with the top. And then I'm just gonna put these bolts in up top, just a couple threads right now just to hold it in place. And then we can start raising up our lower cradle so that we can get our bolt reinstalled. So now I'm just gonna raise up our pole jack until we get this hole lined up so that we can slide the bolt through. Once we have that lined up, this lower shock bolt's probably gonna be lined up as well, so we can get that in. Our pole jack's actually hitting our subframe here. So I'm gonna have to lower it down, adjust it, and then we can go back up. And now we're pretty close. I'm gonna have to get a pry bar in here to pry back on that. And then we can get that bolt through. And then just using the pry bar on the other side, slide that bolt the rest of the way through. And I'll thread that nut on the other side. And now we can take a look at our lower shock mount, and that's lining up pretty well too. Shove that bolt through there, get the nut on the other side. And then we'll grab our 15mm socket and 18mm wrench to tighten those down. And now we can go up to our upper shock mount, take a 16mm swivel socket and tighten that down. I'm gonna go back and forth just to tighten this down evenly. So now we can go back to our exhaust and raise our hangers back up into place. I've got my bolt with a 13mm socket and extension to get the thread started. And I'm just gonna throw that on my impact gun, tighten that one down, and then we'll get the one towards the back. So now we'll just do the same thing on our back hanger. And then you can repeat the whole process for the rear on the other side. So now for the front, I'm just gonna slide our coilover in and get it up into our top mount. And we're gonna be reusing our factory nuts. I'm just gonna throw one on for right now to hold it in place. And then we're just gonna push down on the rotor to get our strut in there and lined up. And then we'll get our new bolt that we have included in the kit. So now I'm gonna reconnect my knuckle to my upper control arm. Just gonna thread that nut on a couple threads. This is gonna help lift up the hub so that we don't have to do as much lifting to get our bottom strut mount in. So now I'm just gonna take that new bolt and include in the kit. We have a new nut for the other side as well, since our nut was welded onto our factory strut. So just line up your hole, push up until you can get that slide through, and then we'll take our nut and just thread that on the other side. So now we're gonna go back to our engine bay. I'm gonna thread those other two factory nuts onto the top of our strut. And then you can take a 13mm socket and tighten all of those down. And now, depending on your year of Challenger, you might have this cap that goes on top. So you can just lay that down and just give it a whack, stick it down. Now we'll take a 21mm socket and wrench to tighten our lower strut bolt. Next, we'll take an 18mm socket to tighten down our upper ball joint. And now you can grab your sway bar end link and slide it in through the tab in the back of the strut. Thread your nut on the other side. And then I'm going to take a 21mm ratcheting wrench and a 10mm socket to hold the stud. Tighten this down. You want the ratchet in reverse. And now you can repeat that same process on the other side. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the StreetPlus Coil-Over Kit for your 2008 to 2023 rear-wheel drive Challenger. Thank you for watching, and for all things Challenger, keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.